Welcome to Cultivate the Ordinary podcast, curious conversations for the anxious, frustrated, and bored. I'm Travis.
And I'm Jessie. So often we're held captive by screens, schedules, and media that's mind-numbing and polarizing. This leaves us seeing dimly through a fog. We want to spark more imagination and a better awareness of God's presence in the everyday.
Join us on a fun journey of discovery and curiosity as we look at the ordinary through the lenses of joy, wonder, beauty, and hope. All right, I am Travis, one of your hosts of Cultivate the Ordinary podcast, joined by my co-host and beautiful wife,
Jessie.
Okay, we did practice that, so I don't know.
You want me to say I'm your beautiful wife?
Off to a great start. So, yep, we're really glad to be back. We took a break. I think we ended kind of October of last year, 24. And here we are recording now at the end of January in 2025. Really excited about this new year of just, new topics and guests. And and then we also have a video version of the podcast at YouTube. So we'll have links for that as well. So if you prefer watching video podcasts, which many Americans do, it's one of the biggest platforms podcasts now, check that out. And you can see the eye rolls that we give to each other because now we're not, just facing each other off video where you can see everything. So
yeah, but I'm not in the same room as you, so I can't flap your shoulder.
Yeah, you can. You can just air. You can air nudge me. So, okay. So this episode, we're going to talk just about the new year, kind of things we're excited about, some vision and goals. Talk actually a little bit about goals this year. We did that last year as well, as it was the new year. Going to talk some about that because a lot of people, you're listening and thinking, goals, losing weight or working out more or reading more or eating healthier. It's just a common, now it's kind of that time that a lot of us are kind of in that mode. So, Jess, what are you most looking forward to in 2025?
Well, I am very much looking forward to what we're doing in about a week, which is celebrating our 17th wedding anniversary on a cruise. So we wanted to do that 2 years ago for our 15 and had other plans, but getting to go see our favorite band, Carbon Leaf, and cruise the Caribbean, Dominican, and Bahamas, Grand Turks, Caicos.
I'm just reading the itinerary right now.
I'm just going off memory.
You know it.
You don't know where we're going, do you?
No, I just know we're getting on a large boat, a large vessel, going to warm waters south of Florida. That's all I know.
The water is going to be 80 degrees. That's all that matters. So what about you? What are you looking forward to in 2025?
Thanks for asking. I'm with you as well. I'm really excited with the cruise coming up. But overall, I think I'm just excited about just new rhythms this year and more life. I just feel like 2024 for me grew kind of apathetic. Usually I'm really, really plugged into the community with other men especially, and trying to just do life with people like that. And I just kind of backed out of that, right? Would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I went into your hibernation a little bit.
Yeah, it's a good way to say it. My soul was kind of hibernating. I wasn't really sometimes I think that can be a good thing, but I don't think it was for me. Just kind of pulled away. We'll talk more about that as well in this episode. All right, before we talk about goals and resolutions, have you ever had what you've considered a bucket list experience?
No, never.
So is this cruise a bucket list?
It's something I've wanted to do for a while, but it's not like a before I die bucket list.
Okay. So I came across this thing on Facebook. It made me laugh. Someone said, "I'm proud to announce that I've completed the first item on my bucket list. I have the bucket." And I was kind of thinking about that whole experience in my life. And I feel like for me, that I have the bucket, but it probably came from Dollar Tree and it's leaking. And so I'm just not holding a lot of bucket list experiences. Also, it was kind of funny that it seems like bucket's too large of a container for most of us in our life of like actual, because you've done some cool things in your life, but you don't think you've really done a bucket list thing yet. So
Well, I guess it's that idea of like creating a bucket list and working towards like, okay, these are the things I am gonna for sure do. Um, if we talk about like, well, where do we want to go on vacation before our kids all graduate? Like, I wouldn't call that a bucket list, but it's sort of like an idea, and
yeah,
we're working towards it.
yeah. When it comes to New Year's resolutions, because right now it's January, it's the beginning of the new year, this is all really relevant. Some people are way past that. They don't, failed enough on New Year's resolutions. Other people still, hey, I'm going to try it again and probably fall off the horse again. But I thought it was interesting that studies show that 90% of New Year's resolutions fail within 2 weeks. Wow. I mean, you think, okay, maybe a few months or something, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not really surprising.
Well, I think it's just the psychology of it. And, we discussed this about this time last year, but the psychology of something being this large goal that you are trying to get to within a certain period of time. And if you don't have a system to get there, then
Yeah.
like I think most people just don't have a system.
Yeah. No, that's probably really right. I guess so. There's a great book. Really encourage you to pick it up called Atomic Habits, and we've referenced this before. He's speaking exactly, I think, of the psychology that you're talking about. And I was just going to read a couple lines from this, a few quotes from his book, you can respond to or see what we think. So, okay, so he's talking about how habits shape our identity and, how we're formed by habits. He says early on that, bear with me as I scroll. It is easy to overestimate the importance of one defining moment and underestimate the value of making small improvements on a daily basis. Too often we convince ourselves that massive success requires massive action. But the differences a tiny improvement can make over time is astounding. The math works out to this. If you get 1% better each day for 1 year, you'll end up 37 times better by the time you're done. Conversely, if you get 1% worse each year, every day for 1 year, you'll decline nearly down to zero. So he's saying what starts as a small win or a minor setback accumulates into something much more. It's a snowball effect. I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
He also talks about like this idea that if you just turn the nose of a plane, just like a degree, the difference between, ending up in like New York, New Jersey, depending where you're leaving from, or Pittsburgh, makes all the difference just in that. So I think he's also kind of getting at that the trajectory is more important actually sometimes than the destination. It's where is it taking us?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think all this is based on research, and, he's just really smart with how he articulates it and has helped like thousands and thousands of people start to form better habits. And one of the other things that he said that I really resonate with is this idea of making a vote for who you want to be. And so, like, every time you make a small change or habit change, you're putting a vote for who you want to become.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And I think he also kind of talks about like, it's about the identity. So it's actually more effective he uses the example, like, instead of, I want to try to like run a lot more, I want to like prepare for this marathon. He switches to the identity of make it about, I want to become this. I want to become a runner. And when you kind of reorient like it to that person you're trying to be, like you kind of think, okay, this then makes it a lot more manageable, and that like it's kind of a daily thing that I'm becoming this versus like this thing that I just dramatically have to do. And I think, and so later on in the book, I think he talks about how it's not even the motivation that we fail in sometimes, it's the lack of clarity. And I really love that, the lack of our clarity.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I've always loved to do, and I've done it for about 3 or 4 years, is having almost like a word or a phrase that just centers your entire year. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to get this one task completed by the end of the year, but it's I want to become more like this thing. So for last year, it was laying down fear. For this year, it really feels a lot like, simplifying, becoming a person of simplicity. And that's in all areas of life.
Yeah.
And then when you have that, then you can kind of look at all the different places that you can apply it to and make it specific. And, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think too, the last thing we'll say about this, and unless you have any other thoughts about anything with goals or resolutions, is that I go back, and this is helpful for me, and I want to first say, and you be the first to say, like, I really suck at this. So when I talk about it, it's kind of an encouragement or reminder to me to work on it. So by no means am I like, look where I've come from on this. Other things, I think I've probably made bigger gains, but just habits and disciplines I really struggle with. Part of it is I don't like to feel trapped. I don't think I grew up with a lot of structure and disciplines, and so it feels a lot more foreign, all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that really helps me think about this when it comes to motivation and goals and making these things happen is the idea of a fire analogy, like a bonfire. And I think of a spark versus structure. Hang with me here now. Okay. So we can all think of like when we start a fire, we need the spark. It's not going to start without the spark. Similarly to like an idea, like it takes a spark of something that inspires us. Like, I want to run a marathon or whatever it is, or I want to get healthier because there's something that sparks us to want to like move, right? But if in a bonfire, we have no structure, we have no, like, literally just have the lighter and, maybe something, a few, like, I don't know, toilet paper, I don't know, whatever you're using to start, that's going to flame out quick, right? And it's not going to like go anywhere. You also can't start with just the structure. I mean, you have to have spark, but think of the structure that you're creating for the fire. You're stacking it to give it air. You're, kind of creating a container for it to burn with your sticks and whatever you're using. And then like that. So I just think of like, you need a boat. And I don't know, that's just, my mind often goes to bonfires
Yeah.
for different things, but it's a good analogy for me. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, no, I remember you sharing that with me before, and I think it just affirms the importance of the idea, and the idea of a resolution is it wrong or bad, but you need something more to keep it going. And that comes down to that building of something that is sustainable. Yeah, for sure.
All right. That's my part on Atomic Habits. What do you have? Thoughts?
Something I asked some friends of mine recently is, what are you listening to? Because I was just curious. I was like, not just music, not just podcasts, but like, what are the voices you're hearing from that are adding value to your life? Because I just was struck by another friend of mine's, her counseling practice email that just had some beautiful things like images and poetry and stuff like that. And so then she also included a song that she's been listening to that's just lighting her up. And I started listening to that song on repeat. And then I started reflecting on, if I were to compile the things that are influencing me recently, what would it be? And so I just kind of took it from there. And I had the best conversation with these ladies.
So what are you listening to now, or hope to be listening to more?
Well, like that song that I mentioned is Andy Grammer. It's called Monster. Some of the lyrics are like, there's a monster in me who shut down, went to sleep, and forgot who he really was, but he's waking up. And this is real high, like fast-paced, like upbeat song. It's kind of like an anthem. It's really good. And then he says, I feel like I'm rising and shining, and then goes on. And then he says, I've been asleep for a minute, but my visions are beginning to finally reappear. And it's just that, like, I think anybody can resonate with that. It just feels like
Right.
sometimes, especially as a parent, and the older you get, more responsibility, more tasks, more things that you just have to do, but the life doesn't feel like it's in you. You've kind of, like we mentioned, you kind of went into hibernation, and you just don't have a lot of spark, and something's got to wake us up.
Right.
And he's just talking about that when it happens.
I love that. Yeah. That's making me think, what am I listening to? What I'm listening to is too much football. You could agree with that.
I would agree with that. You're listening to a lot of football commentary.
Too much. I'm a tortured fan of Minnesota Vikings. It's just been awful. And I listen to a Vikings podcast way too much. And that's, probably not the best thing to constantly fill myself with. So, I do read a lot, and I'm often reading quote books and just books that help me grow. And I don't know, I love being inspired. This year, I think I'm really delving more into like books on landscape as well, like humor, joy, as they kind of overlap in the faith for the Christian. What does it mean to have the joy of God? What does it mean to laugh like a child and have that childlike faith? Those are kind of some things. And then also like geography, how we're formed by places and shaped by, where we came from. So, yep. It's a little meandering thing of me. I want to close this thing down with a quote and a short discussion on it. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right. So one of my all-time favorite quotes, and to me, there's some quotes that are like life-altering, like they change the direction of where you're living. Like you might be going one way, or you might pause and go, wow, that just illuminated a whole new path. The great civil rights champion, theologian, philosopher Howard Thurman, and writer, once said, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and go do that. Because what the world needs is people who've come alive.
Yes.
Remember hearing that quote for the first time and just stopped in my tracks. And as I shared at the beginning of this podcast, me in 2024, that, I felt apathy. I felt like a loss of life. I wasn't feeling alive a lot, especially to close the year out. And so that's kind of a thing that I'm really leaning into this year. Is that question, and kind of letting that question kind of be my pulse. Like, am I feeling alive? And so I actually am in a men's group at our church, which is awesome. We're kind of kicking that off in the new year here. And like, we met up last week and actually posed that question to everybody. Like, are you as a guy feeling alive, and what makes you come alive? And I was just like astounded at how common it was. And I do think there's something to, maybe stereotyping here, but especially men, you get into 30, 40 plus, that I think we can just really quickly lose who we are, our identity. We kind of lose sense of purpose, maybe. I think that seems really common. That sense of like adventure and like, kind of doing courageous things together. We're things, so like, now we all have different things that make us kind of feel like we come alive. But anyway, that was a really powerful thing I think people agree with. Like, I'm either not feeling that alive, or here's what I need to feel alive.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. It makes me think a little bit about another conversation I had with some women too, where it was this line of, what are you seeking, or what's seeking you? And it's that, what's that thing? What's the one thing that your soul needs? And, there's more than one thing, but for this time, there's something that you need, so there's different periods of time that I need to paint. And then there's times I really need to go be by water. There's times I really need to have a robust, like philosophical or theological conversation with somebody. Like, it's just what makes me come alive. Yeah.
That's great. I think part of that too is giving ourselves permission to let ourselves come alive and do those things. First, let's identify them. What are they? I remember when I met up with my spiritual director a few years ago early on, and one of the things he said is at one point in his life he had to just go to the mountains regularly, just drive up to the mountains for his soul. And I love that. It was like he was giving himself permission to just like, this is my breath at times.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love what you said, and I love that. I think if we can all work this year on what are those things that make us come alive? We're all unique. We all have gifts that no one else has, or just experiences that only we bring uniquely in the world and could share and help others through that. I don't know, just finding what is that thing and go doing that, being alive, and the world, just as Thurman says, like that's what the world needs: living people that are lights. And
yeah,
we say as believers in Jesus, of all people, we should have light and life in us.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I agree. And we're in this pocket of time right now in our lives where we have the freedom to work from home, and we have the ability to travel some. And, like I've just made the decision to help my my 9th grade son be homeschooled again, because that's what he needs. And,
yep.
Being able to choose is really important. And so I know not everybody is in the position to be able to have quite that type of freedom, whether it's time freedom, financial freedom, being able to just take a deep breath and just do what they love. Like, I'm hearing already in the back of my head, like the groanings of people who are stuck in 2 jobs, stuck in poverty, stuck in, maybe they're stuck in addictions, maybe they're stuck in other things that are so in the way that aliveness, that seems so far away, And so what would you say to that person?
So you like that? Just aliveness is like gratuitous. It's like, yeah, well, let's just talk about surviving, kind of.
Yeah.
Like that's stage 2.
Yeah.
Well,
in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like there's truth in that. Like, first, you do have to have your basic needs met, like, right. and you have to feel safe. You have to be secure and all that.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I would respond to that. It triggers something in me of a quote by Parker Palmer, who writes a lot about soul care and kind of things. And because I think related to this, it's just burnout, and not living alive, living sort of just, on empty or running on fumes. What he says, and this is really helpful, is one sign that I'm violating my own nature in the name of nobility is a condition called burnout. Though usually regarded as the result of trying to give too much, burnout, in my experience, results from trying to give what I do not possess, the ultimate in giving too little. Burnout is a state of emptiness, to be sure, but it does not result from giving all I have. It merely reveals the nothingness from which I was trying to give in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that we can be really busy Americans, overloaded with, routines and jobs, kids and soccer and blah, blah, blah. Like the day is filled up. Within that, though, you and I would both believe and agree that we have the license and the ability to craft, in even very busy days, the rhythms and practices to give us life. It can be, taking part of a day, a small, maybe it's a walk, sitting and just breathing, communing with God in the sunshine. I think it's just finding, like, again, this is called the ordinary. What are ordinary moments in time in the everyday that you can just find those things that give you life? And I think that we can, and we have to.
Yeah, this really reminds me of a conversation you and I had with Steve once, Steve Smith, has kind of been a mentor in soul care. And that it's like, if you almost picture we're like this, I don't know, I don't know if it's a gas station or what the analogy was, but like I am a gas pump and I'm constantly filling up everybody else, right? And that at some point I'm going to run out. I do have to have some hose filling me back up. And so really coming alive, it's not a luxury. Like it's a necessity, and it's not expensive things. It's not, it really is simple, basic things that are just like you said, sitting in the sunshine, taking some deep breaths, going for a walk, turning that hose back to yourself and just saying like, I can be filled up. It's okay. I don't have to give from empty,
Yeah, that's great. And I would just add to that too. Like, I think as spouses, if you're married, it's doing a good job to recognize in your spouse what they need and encourage that of like if it's a wife and her husband and she knows like he just really comes alive in his wood shop, but he's just not taking time to do that or feels guilty or whatever, like that needs to be encouraged for him. I mean, if that is, those are, and then vice versa, back with her of like, maybe she's lost getting in touch with girlfriends going out, to get a drink, for the night or something with friends or hanging out for dinner or whatever, or whatever the hobby is, right? And just recognizing like those are life-giving things. They shouldn't just be seen as luxuries or whatever.
Yeah.
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 So
good stuff.
With that being said, I guess I'll be purchasing a lot more mountain bikes to work on.
If you go and ride the bikes.
Because of all the health it's giving me for my soul. I feel like there's going to be a conversation after this ends. All right. Well, any final words, Jess?
Where'd you get your Kmart hat?
Oh, my Kmart hat. This is a reason to just get on YouTube and watch this podcast. I have a retro Kmart hat. My big thing actually now is a huge fan of trucker hats, but my big thing is I discovered at Walmart, they have just the blank truckers. eBay, you get the patch, you sew the patch on, and now you've got a custom
trucker hat.
You only spent like $10. So I found a Kmart patch, and I cannot tell you already, I'm going around and I've had people, I was at a brewery the other day and multiple people were coming up to me like, oh, Kmart. It was like almost like I was carrying around like
like a puppy.
Yeah, seriously, like just the sadness of like, oh, which Kmart? And I was like, I miss, and then strangers just tell me stories of like Little Caesars and like,
yeah.
And it was just like a piece of Americana has died. And you're like oddly wearing, but I think it's just so weird that you're like, wait, is that? And interesting, I think the last store closed last year. So it was like in a ritzy area out east. So it's random. This podcast also has random stuff. So.
Because it has you.
Yes. It's been great being back. Looking forward to this new year and appreciate your listening and hanging out with us today. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. I hope you found something helpful, hopeful, or thought-provoking. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to any resources mentioned in the podcast. And we also have links in the notes for our own resources to check out. We would really love to hear from you. And we're also really grateful for your support by sharing the podcast episodes with your friends and family and leaving a rating and review. May we all regain and maintain our wonder, hope, and inspiration as we look at our ordinary through new and fresh eyes.